Tonight, 25,000 Muslim migrants? Oh, we've taken many more than that. I'll break the numbers down for you. It's November 27th. You're watching The Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
Welcome to the show. In a moment, we'll talk to you about the NDP's war against Alberta farms. But first, let's talk about refugees for a moment. The most acute reason why Canadians are worried about Syrian migrants is the risk to our safety and national security, the risk of terrorists embedding themselves amongst refugees. Several of the Islamic State terrorists in the attack this month in Paris sneaked into Europe as refugees. The Boston Marathon bombers came to America as refugees. It's a common trick. And Justin Trudeau's rushed Muslim migration means that normal background checks are being skipped over. It's so dangerous, especially since the Islamic State has expressly said they plan to slip in amongst refugees, and they've specifically named Canada as a target. But here's another reason why Canadians are wary about the Liberals' insistence that we take tens of thousands of Syrians and then we take them so quickly. Taking more Muslims from Syria when Muslim terrorists are the problem there seems contrary to the whole idea of refugees. I mean, why aren't we focusing on the most vulnerable victims, the Christian Arabs or the Yazidis or the Kurds who are being murdered by Muslim terrorists? It's a Muslim majority country. They're killing some Muslims in a civil war, yes, but they are literally exterminating Christians and other minorities. So why is Justin Trudeau emphasizing taking more Muslims? Well, let me show you something. Here is the Statistics Canada website showing a list of all the countries from which Canada has taken immigrants in the 10 years from 2005 to 2014. You can see that we've taken a lot of immigrants from China. No surprise, it's the largest country in the world. You can see India up there too. Again, no surprise, second largest country in the world, part of the British Commonwealth. I started looking at this chart and I thought, how many migrants has Canada taken in the past 10 years from Muslim majority countries? Trudeau wants to ram through 25,000 Muslims from Syria in the next month or two. It's nuts from a safety and security point of view. He's reckless. But what about the bigger question? I mean, how many Muslim immigrants has Canada already chosen to take in the past 10 years? So I eliminated China and India and the US and the Philippines from the list, and I just added up the immigration from 30 Muslim majority countries, tiny little ones like the oil-rich Gulf states, Oman, Kuwait, only a few hundred from there, and then the huge ones like Pakistan, home of the Taliban and other Muslim terrorist groups, Iran, sponsor of terrorist groups, a theocratic dictatorship, Afghanistan, pretty much terrorist central. And then there are places that are half Muslim, like Nigeria, home of the Boko Haram Muslim terrorists. So here's the math, courtesy of Statistics Canada. In the 10 years from 2005 to 2014, for which data are available, 561,165 immigrants moved to Canada from Muslim-majority countries. In that 10-year period, Canada deliberately doubled our Muslim population. This wasn't natural birth rates. This was a deliberate act of social and political engineering, a decision made in Ottawa, made by the Liberal government in 2005, but for the years after that, made by the Conservative government to deliberately change the demographic nature of Canada. Now, let me say the obvious. Some of the people who immigrate from these hellholes are great people. True Liberals, Democrats, people who love freedom, sure. Some of them are. I know some of them personally. Great Pakistani Canadians like Tariq Fatah and Raheel Raza, the best people, the building blocks of Canada, trustworthy, safe, charitable, public-spirited. Sure, some of them are like that. Some people are true dissidents, people who are trying to reform their home country. But plenty of these migrants are illiberal, like the thug Mohammed Shafia, this guy, originally from Afghanistan, moved to Canada in 2007. You'll remember him. He murdered his 3 daughters and one of his polygamous wives here in Canada 2 years after arriving. Mohammed Parvez is another one. He immigrated to Canada from Pakistan too. He murdered his daughter, this girl, Aqsa Parvez. Again and again, Muslim immigrants to Canada are implicated, if not in honor killings, then in terrorist plots. It's not often outright terrorism, it's often illiberal, un-Canadian ideas about Muslim supremacy, about the inferiority of women, about treating Jews and Christians as lower than Muslims. All of these Sharia law ideas, you can't even call those terrorism, but they're un-Canadian, like this Muslim immigrant preaching at a mosque in Quebec.
إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف.
Or this Muslim immigrant at a mosque in Ontario.
In a Muslim country, and you insult Muhammad or Jesus, you will receive the same punishment. But it could also, be to the point as far as killing that person.
Or this one.
ثم تكون خلافة راشدة على منهاج النبوة إننا نستقبلها.
None of those men are terrorists. They're all just bigoted human beings, all immigrants from Muslim-majority countries. And we've shipped in 561,000 of them, with more every year. And now Justin Trudeau wants to bring in special delivery, rushing in another 25,000 from Syria, the most terrorist-infested country in the world. Yeah, no thanks. We've done our part for 10 years straight. How about we take a pause? Visit RefugeePause.ca to sign our petition. We've got 561,000 Muslim migrants here already. Why don't we just take a breather, take a little longer to absorb the wilder ones, to teach them about the equality of men and women, about the separation of mosque and state, about the fact that we don't murder our girls because they don't want to dress in body bags when they go out in public. Yeah, we have done our part. We have doubled our Muslim population since 9/11. I think it's time to press pause. Don't you? Stay with us. More after these words.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Welcome back to the program. We have been talking about Syrian refugees for months on this program, looking at things through a political lens. Now let's bring in an expert in immigration law and how that law actually works. His name is Richard Kurland, and he joins us now via Skype from Vancouver. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, I feel like there is a shortage of information about how we are taking people from a war zone and bringing them here. Here's some of the questions I don't quite know the answers to, and I don't know if anyone does. Who are we taking? How do we select them, or do they select us? Have we delegated that to another agency like the UN? How do we screen people in a war zone when they may not have any documents, or when there's the risk of document fraud or corruption? And finally, how do we know if someone is a security risk? It's one thing for them to have been an actual member or participant in a terrorist group, but it's another thing if they're a sympathizer. So these are all my questions. I'm looking to you to try and give me some answers. Can you help?
Sure can. All right. First, Canada is the global expert on how to do this. Canada has several decades of experience. Our intelligence officers, our immigration officers lead the world when it comes to protecting Canada from terrorists, sympathizers, and bad people when it comes to refugee selection. And here's how it works. Simply, you have multiple layers of security. You do not trust the United Nations to make a security determination. You do not trust the individual is not a terrorist based on their statement. You do not even trust the documents that they're offering to prove identity. When you start out with those assumptions, you build up a real strong security screening system. So, in today's world, first, the toys. What we have now on the ground since 9/11 are very expensive, very sophisticated intelligence systems. It's not just a Canadian system we share information with like-minded countries like the United States, Australia, or Britain. We use biometric technology to identify individuals, and that way, when they're a known bad person, the case stops. We do not rely on the United Nations to make these security decisions, but we do allow the UN to identify individuals they think we should consider. That's fair game. Here's the kicker, the absolute kicker. We use profiling. Now, experience shows in the murky world of counterintelligence that if you do this job correctly, you absolutely bring down the risk to between 0 and very close to 0. Here's what I mean. It's the consensus of counter-intel people from several like-minded countries that the minimum risk is when you choose young families with young children. And that's because intelligent history teaches us that these are not the individuals who go off and do bad things. They care about their kids. They care about their families. So who does not get selected when you do this? Single males, single females in many cases, and you can also drill down a little further. That's where the Canadian experience comes to light. We're the ones who brought in people from former Uganda, when you had a lot of bad people floating around Africa. We're the ones who brought in people who were potentially communists during the Hungarian post-revolution, as well as the Vietnamese boat people. So over the years, we've developed a cadre of officers highly trained in profiling and intelligence assessment based on body language and the like. Here's why you gotta stop the nervous Nellies. You see, what Canadians really don't realize by and large is that every year we're taking over 200 million visits. That's almost 400,000 visits every day.
Okay, now you said a lot of interesting things, and I find it encouraging, and I'm glad you're here because you are providing a response to some of my thoughts and opinions over the last few weeks. So I'm very glad to have you. But let me respond to a few of your points. It's my understanding that to screen a person, especially coming from a place where documents are poor, documents may not exist, and really there's so many different factions fighting each other, that normally that takes, let's say, 10 months. But to ram through 25,000 in a month, or now 10,000 in a month, I mean, how many of our immigration officers even speak Arabic? So we're talking about doing 300 a day, Richard.
No, but you see, it's like hip replacements. It'll take you 2 years or 4 years, depending on your province, to get a hip replacement. It's not because it takes 4 years for the operation, it's because the supply of doctors and operating rooms is limited. Same deal for security background check. It's 10 months or 2 years or 5 years. That's not the issue. It's how many people do you have available to do the work. So I had recommended way back that Canada not send more visa officers. We need to send more intelligence resources.
Well, have we done that? Do we know any of that? Because I agree with you. I mean, I don't know how many people there are in CSIS available to do this, or the RCMP. I don't know how many speak Arabic. I don't even know if we're having a sit-down interview with these people. Do you know if we're doing that?
Yeah, we are. I went to the old men in the village, individuals who are now retired, and they used to do for the Government of Canada things like counterintelligence. I even contacted our old friend, I hope, Martin Collicott, former ambassador from Canada.
Oh, I know him. He's great. Yeah.
He and I together publicly went on record to indicate there are no serious concerns when it comes to Canada's security screening of precisely this group of people.
Well, I mean, I point out that in Europe, in the recent attacks on Paris, 2 of the people that police say were part of the attacks sneaked in. amongst
Exactly.
refugees. The Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, they claim to be refugees. Ahmed Rassam, the Millennium Bomber, claimed to be a refugee. I'm not saying, so it's not even that the real refugees turn terrorist, although that is a risk, I suppose. It's that people sneak in with them. I mean, let me throw a particular to you. You say young families with kids. That sounds right to me, but I see that the civil servant in charge of this says, no, we will still take single men. So I don't know who to believe on what's going on the ground.
Let me add a few things. First of all, Canada, unlike Europe, doesn't run a turnstile security system where you show up on a beach in Greece, flash a passport, and you're in.
Yeah.
That's not a security system.
Yeah.
We don't use that. For single males, the exception is this, and I had also recommended this exception. If you're a single male and you have evidence, verifiable evidence, that you're gay, you're not a security threat. You know full well what those theocratic regimes do to gays.
Yeah, they throw them off buildings. They hang them from the neck from a crane.
There you go. And so you do not see gay terrorists coming out of that region.
How hard is it for someone from the Islamic State to claim they're gay, though?
There you go. It's verifiable. And we do have both the technology and the history to deal with that. Of more concern is a valid point raised. You're never going to catch the terrorist virgin. If you have someone in Canada born here that becomes radicalized, there's nothing you can do. If they come at a young age, 2, 3, 10, and they become radicalized, they're not on radar. So here's the other thing Canada does that you left off your list. Our security screening does not stop once you arrive in Canada. It continues. Our people here in Canada basically continuously review individuals coming in like this. They are living in electronic goldfish bowls. Just because you leave the airport does not mean you leave Canada's security layered protection system. And most people don't realize that.
What kind of security would there be? I mean, these people would have freedom from warrantless searches and seizures. I mean, it's not like we're reading their emails. What kind of security would continue once they're here?
I'm not going to train terrorists on how to skirt our systems, but electronic communications at the first line of defense, it's extremely effective. There are also individuals within the target communities that serve the government of Canada.
So Let me ask you one last question, Richard, and this is what I asked Michelle Rempel, the conservative critic, yesterday. If you have two Muslim families from Syria, and there's only space for one, and there's one last space, and you've got two families. One of them is liberal, democratic, they love freedom, they love the equality of all religions and races, really strong Canadian values, and they're over here. And then we have another family, believes in Sharia law, the women are wearing burqas or niqabs, they don't believe in the separation of mosque and state. I think most Canadians would say, take the people with the Canadian values. You're not saying no Muslims. You're saying have Muslims who believe in reconciling Islam with democracy. But we don't screen for ideology, do we?
Well, not so fast there.
Well,
not so fast there. The only known, publicly known, written instruction about this comes from the government of Quebec. They provide instructions to screening officers, their visa officers, that if you approach someone you've just described and offer to shake their hand and they say, I don't shake the hand of infidels, the visa officer is instructed to reject the application on the spot. So I think it's reasonable to believe that our triage officers in the field are well aware of the situations you've described. I'd even add another layer of SIFT. I'd like to see some tangible evidence that they can economically integrate without harming the Canadian tax dollar. So in your scenario, I think it's a no-brainer.
Well, I think so too, but you know, Justin Trudeau, he's the guy who doesn't believe you should take off your niqab when you're in a court. He's the guy who thinks you don't even have to have photo ID to vote. So you're a very reasonable man. You're coming across very sanguine and optimistic. I don't share your optimism because I know that Justin Trudeau, he will go. He has gone to the Wahhabi mosque in Montreal to campaign. There is no mosque in Canada I'm aware of that's too radical for him to campaign at. So he doesn't seem to be turned off by radical Islam. You say that men on the ground, women on the ground, that would be how I would do it. I would send all women and gay men to be our screeners, and the Syrians who say, yuck, I don't touch infidel women, I don't touch gay men, fine. I'd send Sammy Davis Jr., a Jewish black man. I would send the most politically correct people over there, and like Wolfbang to scare off the bigots. I think that's a fantasy, though. I don't know if that's what's happening. Last word to you, Richard.
Well, I have concerns about Prime Minister Trudeau's political statements. This was one of his major campaign promises. It's also the first promise broken. We're not going to see 25,000 people here by December 31st. And I see a further watering down of that 25,000 figure over time. There's a lot of wiggling going on. And if this is how Canada is going to be governed in future, if this is the example, we got some serious concerns ahead, and I advise everyone to double up on their Access to Information Act requests at every federal department from here on.
Well, frankly, on this promise, I'm glad he broke it. Listen, Richard, you and I don't agree on everything, but you're a smart guy who cares deeply about this country. You're knowledgeable in the law, and I'm very grateful to you for coming on the show and providing the other point of view. And I know our viewers would thank you for that, too.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, Ezra.
Thanks very much, folks. Stick around. More after the break.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Welcome back to the show. We talk a lot about Alberta, not just because it's where I'm from originally, but it's an important province, not just for Albertans, but for the rest of the country. Alberta has been the strong horse pulling the cart of Canada for so many years, especially as Ontario has become an economic have-not province. But in a freak election earlier this spring, the New Democrats took over, and they've declared war against the two key industries of that province, oil and gas and agriculture. And joining us now via Skype from Fort Saskatchewan is Sheila Gunn Reid, our Alberta Bureau Chief, who comes from both of these industries. Sheila, great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ezra.
I've been following your reports very closely, as have so many of our viewers. Tell me the feeling in parts of Alberta that the NDP didn't dominate in the election. The NDP really won the election in May by sweeping Edmonton and some of the other urban centers. They don't have a connection to rural Alberta. Frankly, I think they despise the culture of rural Alberta, and so they've declared war on rural Alberta, both oil and gas and farms and ranches. Tell me the facts.
Well, you're exactly right. Right now, with the NDP government's bad farm safety legislation, Bill 6, combined with their ongoing attack on oil and gas, what we're seeing is a lot of outrage building in these small communities across the province. What the NDP fails to realize is many of the farmers that they're attacking now are unemployed oil and gas workers, because many farmers supplement their income by working in oil and gas. So you might have been able to attack them once, but they're attacking them again, and the farmers are mad.
I think our viewers are fairly familiar with the carbon tax and the income tax and the oil sands royalty reviews. I think the war against the oil patch has been documented fairly well these last 6 months, culminating in the multi-billion-dollar carbon tax on Sunday. But I don't think many of our viewers, especially outside Alberta, are as familiar with the war on farms. I mean, I'm not from a farming family, obviously, but I did grow up west of Calgary amongst farmers and ranchers. And they're all family farms. There's really no such thing as a farm in Alberta that isn't a family farm. And what I mean by that is the husband and the wife and the kids all help out in busy times. It's not a 9-to-5 unionized operation with minimum wage and vacation pay. I mean, if a calf is being born, it doesn't wait till someone punches in a clock. At harvest time, you don't, keep time. The idea of bringing union rules to family farms is basically an NDP war on the farm.
It really is, and it goes beyond just union rules. Farmers have been resistant to this sort of legislation for a long time. What this new legislation will do will patch over other labor legislation, for example, child labor laws. So my children can't help their grandmother pick eggs anymore or help my mom shear her sheep because children can't work on the farm anymore. They can't be engaged in any sort of commercial activity on the farm. In Alberta, it's almost customary. It's a rite of passing for a lot of farm kids to learn how to drive a grain truck or a tractor before you're ever behind the wheel of an actual vehicle on the road. And now with this new farm legislation, that becomes illegal for farm kids to do because, again, they can't be engaged in any sort of commercial activity on the farm. It's really an attack on our Western Canadian culture, not just Alberta, but how we live out west. And this bill will bring an end to it.
You know, it's so different. If the people who created the NDP 75 or 80 years ago would see what is being done in the party's name today, they would have abandoned their project. The CCF merged with the big labor unions. It was basically farmers and city unions coming together. But today's NDP really isn't about either working men and women outside who wear hard hats, in oil and gas or ports. They're the only unions that the NDP cares about are public sector government workers unions, and they have zero ties to the farm whatsoever. I mean, you ask a New Democrat MLA where does food come from, he'll say, from the grocery store. I mean, these people are so disconnected from actual laborers. They claim to be the party of labor, but they're the party of the faculty lounge and the environmental activist circuit. I put it to you, Sheila, that they actually hate farmers. They're not trying to solve a real problem. To them, the farms are the problem.
You know what, Ezra, I completely agree. Farmers and ranchers, oil patch workers, they really do carry the torch of small c conservatism. They don't want the government in their face. They don't like paying more taxes than they need to. And they don't like being told how to volunteer their time or how best to spend their time in their business. And this is what the NDP seeks to do with their attacks on rural Alberta, is they're trying to apply urban, elitist, leftist attitudes to people who've never felt that way. And they're on a real collision course with farmers right now.
Sheila, you did an amazing story the other day about the town of Hanna. I've been to Hanna. It's basically coal and agriculture, both of which are under attack by the NDP. Now, you have started SaveAlbertaFarms.ca, and we've had more than 10,000 people sign that petition in the last 3 days. We also have a StopTheCarbonTax.com campaign. We got a lot of campaigns going on because there's a lot going wrong. You are going to cover some rallies. By the time this airs on Friday night, Friday's rally will be over, but tell me about some of the Save the Farm events, because I'd like to encourage the people who've signed our petition to attend them. Tell me what's going on Monday in regards to Save the Farm.
On Monday, there's a rally at the Alberta Legislature at noon. It sounds like there will be some speakers, some MLAs. I'm not sure if they'll be PCs or Wild Roses, but the farming community is encouraging everybody to come out and have their voices be heard, because this legislation is being rammed through before the end of the fall sitting. And many of the information sessions that the NDP is claiming to hold for the farmers, they occur after the bill is passed. So there's really no real consultation for the farmers, and they feel like they're not involved in a law that's going to change their entire way of life. So they're taking to the legislature on Monday at noon, and I'll be there. And hopefully I can speak to some farmers. They're my people, and I want to give them a chance for the government to listen to them as opposed to just their public sector union friends.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Sheila, I'm going to send an email out to everybody on our list, or maybe you can send that email out. We'll encourage people to meet you at the legislature Monday at noon to say their piece. It is so clear to me that when the NDP passes the law first and then consults second, it's a sham consultation, which is becoming the new normal for this government. It is so clear to me there is no problem in Alberta farms and ranches. The NDP thinks the farms and ranches themselves are the problem. I am so grateful that you are out there fighting for your people as well as for the country. I mean, this is your family. This is a great province, and we've got to save them because I don't know who else will. Sheila, stay strong, my friend. And folks, if you haven't signed up yet, go to savealbertafarms.ca. Good luck on Monday, Sheila. I look forward to your report from the legislature. Folks, stick around after the break. Your feedback on our show last night.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
Welcome back. Here's your feedback. Kurt Freitag writes, Ezra, your interview with Michelle Rempel was hard to watch. I was begging for the shepherd's crook to come out from behind the curtains and yank her off the screen. Well, listen, she's a politician, and the media are vicious on this, and she's being careful. But look, at a certain point in time, Her Majesty's loyal opposition has a duty to oppose the government if they're not answering basic questions like, how are we screening these people? What steps are being glossed over? We heard from Richard Kurland today. I really like that guy a lot. And he says, oh, no, it's going to be fine. He's going by his hunch. I want the facts. I don't think it is possible to vet 300 people a day in Arabic. I'm sorry, I just don't think it is. And at a certain point in time, Michelle Rempel has to stop being sort of smiley and, can you answer, can you answer? And when no answers are forthcoming, I think it's her job to oppose. All right, Mike Corbin writes, I just binge watched the Ezra Levant show. Hey, that's the way it happens a lot these days, eh? On Netflix, you sit down and you just watch like 6 hours of your favorite show or HBO. That's sort of where we are. I mean, if you miss a show, it's not like the old Sun News Network, where if you weren't sitting down at 8 p.m. Eastern, you missed the show. Here, you know, they're all there on YouTube to watch whenever you like, on your laptop, on your phone. Even if you have Apple TV or something like that, you can just watch it on your big TV set. So yeah, you can binge watch it. You can surf back and forth, pause. It's the new way of doing TV, and we're sort of figuring it out as we go. We've got a few wrinkles, but we're ironing them out every day. In fact, here's the next letter on that point. My friend Wyatt Webster writes and says, Ezra, the video, audio, and the Skype calls were excellent on yesterday's show. Great work, Team Rebel. You make us proud. Wyatt, thank you so much for being a supporter of our studio. And remember, this place I'm standing right now was bought by you. You crowdfunded it. And we're figuring it out. I mean, I don't want to bore you with technical stuff, but even this new microphone I'm having, we know we have some technical and video issues, and every day we just try a new thing to figure it out. We're getting better. And I tell you, we're doing it on about 1/1000th of the CBC's budget, but I think we're doing, in many cases, better news and fairer commentary. Anyways, that's today's show. If you want to, there's a few websites we've been talking about lately, but I want to emphasize RefugeePause.ca. And the reason for that is, look, Richard Kurland is pretty excited about bringing into Canada refugees who want to become great Canadians. And I've seen people like that. I think we all have. I mean, I keep on thinking about outstanding Canadians like Tarek Fata, Raheel Raza, people who just, you can't help but smile. They love Canada in many cases more than people who were just lucky enough to be born here. But I want to make sure that that's how we screen everybody, not just for security, not just to keep up the dangerous people, but I don't want to bring in people who believe that women should wear a bag over their head. And we've been bringing in people like that who kill their own kids, who dare to dress like Canadians. I think we've got to pause. My monologue today, my opening video commentary, shown we've taken more than 500,000 Muslim migrants in the last 10 years. And of course, many of them are great Canadians, liberal, love Canada. But we're not screening for radical ideology. I showed you 3 crazy Muslim bigots who are preachers in Canada. How many more Muslim extremists do we have to take along with the genuine refugees? We got to pause. We got to slow it down. We got to protect ourselves, not just physically, but the Canadian culture that makes this country the best in the world. I'm Ezra Levant from all of us at the Rebel.media. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll have news and videos for you all week, and we'll have this full show back again on Monday night. Bye-bye.